Today, we journey to ancient Rome. Not to the palaces, but into narrow alleyways where doors open into cramped, windowless rooms. This will be a quiet glimpse into a day in the life of a woman working in a brothel. No drama, no judgment, just the daily routine. Washing, a comb through the hair, the voices of neighbors, the silence between words, and the warm glow of the evening lamp. If you enjoy these slow, thoughtful stories about lives that never made it into textbooks, leave a comment. It helps the channel grow. And to not miss the next videos, you can subscribe right now. Make yourself comfortable. Let's begin. It is still night, but night in Rome is never truly dark. Somewhere in the distance, a torch flickers near a tavern. Further on, near the Temple of Mercury, the priestesses are already preparing for the morning ritual. The cobbled street beside the old lupanar is still cloaked in shadows, yet the air is beginning to change. It's becoming slightly brighter, slightly louder. A cart rattles by, wheels knocking rhythmically over stone as it carries bread to the bakery. Upstairs, the shopkeeper next door creaks open his shutters. Again. He does it the same way every morning, with a heavy sigh and the groan of wood on wood. In the corner of the room, near silence, only the slow drip of water from a jug into a basin. Soot stains blot the ceiling, marks from the oil lamp that haven't changed in years. The ceiling is low, old, cracked, with winter drafts slipping through. The stone floor is still wet. Someone spilled water there yesterday and never wiped it up. Now bare heels feel the chill, cutting straight to the bone. Behind a thin wooden wall, someone coughs. Then the rustle of straw, the sound of stretching, a mumble beneath the breath. One by one, the women are waking, like birds in a nest. Someone starts to hum, softly, vaguely. Something about the sea. A sea they will never reach. Lying on her bed, little more than a board with a thin mattress, the woman listens to this morning chorus. She knows every sound, every door creak, every voice. She knows when the first clients will arrive and which ones will offer a coin and which, a bottle of sour wine. But that comes later. Now is the calmest time of day. The first minutes when everything is just beginning to wake. When the air holds no heat, no weariness, only the scent of stone, of wine, and that unmistakable Roman morning, the smell of sun-warmed rooftops, horse sweat, and floral oil. She does not rise yet. She lies still, gazing at the ceiling, listening to the city, listening to herself. Ahead of her, another day. This house is no palace, no villa. It doesn't always appear on city maps. It stands apart from the main road, tucked into a narrow alley leading to the forum. The facade is simple, worn plaster, wooden doors that creak with every movement. But behind those doors is life, particular, rhythmic, familiar. The house is layered, not in the literal sense, but in time. Its rooms remember dozens of women who came, lived, and vanished. No one stays here forever, but each leaves something behind. A clay cup with a crack, a tiny comb, a wine stain on the wall, a word scratched into a doorframe. Here, they wake early. Before the sun reaches the roof of the forum, footsteps can already be heard in the rooms. Some wear wooden sandals. Their steps echo at once. Others walk barefoot, yet still give themselves away. The creak of a bed, a breath that changes the moment sleep lifts. A women's house is not only about work, it's about coexistence. In the next room lives Gaia. She yawns loudly and complains every morning about her aching legs. Further down is older Publia, who is always the first to set the kettle on the fire. She has a small silver spoon she hides from everyone. 2 ribbons lie on the floor. Someone tossed them aside yesterday in a hurry and never picked them up. In the jug near the entrance, the last drops of water still carry a hint of rose oil. so diluted now it's barely noticeable. But that faint trace, it marks something. Women live here who try to look better than life allows. The walls are cracked, and on one of the stones someone once carved, "Julia was here," and laughed. No one remembers who Julia was, but everyone remembers that laughter here is rare. So the inscription was left untouched. Morning is a time without obligations, a moment to simply be. Someone braids her hair, another splashes cold water on her face, another sits wrapped in a worn tunic, staring through a crack in the door, waiting for the day to begin. Not because it's welcome, but because it's inevitable. This house by the form is neither temple nor prison. It simply exists, just as it is, and so do the women within it. The jug is old. The spout is chipped, the handle slightly loose, but it still holds its shape. Narrow neck, curved body, the faint impressions of the potter's fingers pressed into the clay long before most of this house's residents were even born. It sits by the door, on a wide stone slab. In the evening, it is filled. In the morning, it begins the day. The water inside, neither cold nor warm, has a unique temperature that can't be described, only felt. Morning. It smells faintly of clay, faintly of the floral oil added the night before, and also of quiet. Because each morning, while everyone is still half asleep, the first sound in the house is the water pouring from the jug into the basin. The woman slowly rinses her face. Her movements are gentle, as though afraid to awaken herself too quickly. Her fingers glide across her skin, pausing near her eyes, where the lines are now just beginning to show. Then, her neck, her shoulders. She does not undress completely, just enough to sweep a cloth across her body. The ritual is not for beauty, but for balance. Here, in this house, cleanliness is a way to not lose oneself. Because even if the room is poor, the bed hard, and the nights heavy, in the morning, you can take water from the jug and begin again. Behind her, the neighbor waits. She says nothing, only watches as the first woman completes her ritual. Then they switch, and again. Water pours into the basin and flows and disappears. In the corner stands a small piece of soap. It smells of laurel and ash. They all share it. Each woman uses a sliver, rubs the foam into her hands, then wipes them on an old cloth. One that, they say, was once embroidered in a noble household. Now it's faded and dull, but still bears traces of its former luxury. A single golden thread along the seam, untouched by water or time. On the floor, footprints of wet feet. Small ones, long ones, wide ones, with toes that look tired. Each pair tells a different story. After washing comes silence. Those few minutes when no one is fully dressed, but no longer half asleep. When skin breathes and the mind has not yet filled with thoughts. This is no luxurious bathhouse, no public thermi. This is a morning in a small house. But in every sip of water from the jug, there is a memory of self. A reminder that you are still alive, and that today has begun once more. Breakfast in this house was never an event, more a habit, a continuation of morning, with no unnecessary words and no unnecessary food. Everything is simple, but in that simplicity lies the deepest sense of stability. On the low wooden table, the remains of yesterday's bread, a little dried out, with a hard crust that crumbles at the slightest touch. It's cut with a knife long since dulled, so the crust tears and the soft part mashes in the hand. But the warmth of fingers brings back a little softness to the bread. In a small bowl, olives. Salty, slightly bitter, brought from the south. Someone sucks on the pit slowly, eyes fixed on the floor. Another woman breaks off a small piece of cheese, sharp and fragrant, slicing it into thin slivers. She eats them with care, as if each bite is its own quiet pleasure. And in a clay jug, wine. Very simple, a bit sour, watered down. Sometimes still warm, having stood since the night before. Yet even so, it gives energy. After a few sips comes a kind of calm, as if the body remembers it's done this many times before. One woman adds a drop of honey to her wine. Another jokes that it's a luxury. A soft, stretched-out laugh follows. No one here laughs loudly. But even the silliest joke, it's like a sip of something warm. They don't speak of work at breakfast. Talk of clients comes later. Now, only silence, pieces of bread, and the scent of oil from a small amphora. Rose oil. It isn't for eating. It's rubbed into hands, sometimes the neck. They say the scent lasts longer than any jewelry. One of the girls dries her hands with a rag and begins braiding her hair. Her movements are quick, as if she's in a hurry, but the others move slowly. They've learned to stretch these moments of breakfast as if the whole day depends on them. And in truth, it does. Behind the wall, a noise. Someone has already arrived, but it's still early. It can still wait. There's time to finish the wine, to chew the last piece of bread, to glance through the crack in the door. Because breakfast is more than food. It's the one moment when you can still feel like just a person. Not a role, not a body, not a smile. Just a woman, eating bread, drinking cheap wine, and listening to Rome awaken beyond the wall. The room is small, too small to truly live in. And yet, it is home. A little stone space with a rounded ceiling like a cave. The walls are damp with time, cracked in places, with peeling plaster that reveals gray limestone beneath. In the center stands a bed. Or rather, something like a platform made of wooden boards, topped with a thin mattress stuffed with straw. Above the bed, there's a hook in the wall. A lantern once hung there. Now only the shadow remains, a faint reminder. To the left, a clay lamp sometimes smokes, leaving black marks on the ceiling. Next to it, a small shelf holds a jug of water, a wooden bowl, and a comb with a cracked handle. In the corner hangs a rope with a few pieces of clothing. A simple tunic, a light shawl, an old plachta that once held bright color but has since turned gray. There are few belongings, but each one matters. Each carries a story. A fabric stained with wine that wouldn't wash out. A lace-up fastened with a button because the original tie was long lost. Sandals lined with leather so they don't rub the heel. Under the bed, a small basket of personal items. Inside, a piece of soap wrapped in rough cloth, a tiny bronze amulet, a wrinkled apple, an old ribbon no one has seen her wear in weeks. The air in the room smells of everything at once. A bit of dampness, a hint of sweat, a touch of oil, and something subtly human. Not a bad smell, just real. Lived in. Light barely enters here. Only a narrow slit beneath the door gives the faintest trace of morning. But the woman is used to it. She knows when the day begins beyond the walls, even without the sun. She knows when the neighbor to the right steps toward the door, when someone taps a heel on the floor, when a jug crashes in the room next door. Life here doesn't pass quickly. It drips like water from a crack. Every act repeats itself each day. The same motions, the same smells, the same sounds. And in that, there's a kind of stability. In the vaulted room, everything is hers. And even when she steps outside, this place waits, with its cracks, its dust, its smoking lamp, and the bed, still holding the warmth of yesterday evening. The corridor is narrow and stone, as if carved into a mountain. It's always a little cool here, even in the heat. The stone keeps its shadow, and sound echoes differently, as if voices turned back on themselves, repeating what was just said. Along this corridor, several doors. All the same. Once new, Now each has its own scratch, its own creak. Several women live here, each with her own story. Some no longer remember each other's real names. Nicknames are more convenient. There's the one who always tries to sing, loud in the mornings, drawing out the words as if on purpose so everyone hears. She paints her lips with red oil and wears a single earring. She says, "It's a style." Another woman speaks in whispers, even when there's nothing to hide. She keeps a letter from someone long gone, and each night she reads it by the glow of a lamp. The corridor is a place of meeting, of friction, of humor. It's where whispers pass, stories are told, jokes are made, where arguments flare, and where peace returns just as quickly, as if nothing happened at all. The women sometimes share a comb, sometimes a bottle of wine, and yet they can grow jealous over a client who chooses the same woman twice in a row. Everything here is personal, even if it seems ordinary. One borrowed a necklace yesterday. The other won't return it today. It might seem small, but between these women, nothing is small. In a space this tight, even shadows make noise. And still, despite the tension, they hold together. Someone brews a mint infusion. She offers it to everyone. Someone else has a new ribbon. She lets the others try it on. Sometimes one of them laughs so genuinely, the echo carries down to the stairs. And even those who were angry yesterday find themselves, unwillingly, smiling today. Life in this corridor isn't easy, isn't romantic, isn't simple. But it has rhythm. It carries a quiet agreement among the women who live here. We are together. We are nearby. We know what each of us is going through. And when someone falls ill, they all know. When someone cries, the others move more slowly. When someone leaves for good, the door is left ajar a little longer than necessary. Just because, just in case. Because in this corridor, there are no accidental people. Everyone is a part of its walls, its air, its voices, which rise, vanish, and return again. Just like the daily rhythm in this women's house, the floor of the room is made of large, rough stone tiles. Long ago, they lost their smoothness, cracked at the edges, their seams filled with dust and sand. If you step barefoot, you feel every cold ridge, every uneven join, every hairline fracture that scrapes your heels. But you get used to it. The stone you walk on daily becomes your own. At the center of the room stands a clay lamp, small, rounded, with a narrow spout for the wick. Once it was brightly painted. You can still see the remnants of the pattern beneath a layer of soot. The lamp rests on a base made from shards of an old bowl. Someone fashioned it from whatever was at hand, and no one has changed it since. Lighting the lamp is its own ritual. The oil is poured slowly, almost silently. The wick is ignited with a piece of charcoal or sulfur. The flame is soft, yellow, like a breath. It doesn't give much light, but it brings calm. Because when the room is dark and only this single fiery eye glows at the center, the space feels smaller, cozier, safer. Beside the lamp lies a thin coverlet, always folded, always in its place, worn but still soft. Its edge is embroidered with red thread, faded in places but still holding hints of brightness. This coverlet isn't for beauty. It's for the body. For nights when the draft slips through the walls. Or for moments when you simply want to hide. Some women use it during the day when they need solitude. Others only at night when they lie on the straw mattress and listen to Rome breathe beyond the wall. The rattle of carts, drunken voices, distant shouts from the marketplace that never truly quiets. The coverlet remembers much. Cold nights, hot days, tears, sighs, tired bodies returning again and again. It isn't washed often. Water is costly and so is time. But it carries the scent of home, of skin, of oil, of dust, and perhaps a trace of hope. And when the lamp is lit and the coverlet rests beside the bed, the room feels complete. Small, yes. Poor, yes, but real. Everything in its place. And the woman who lives here knows, no matter how many foreign days pass through her life, this space will always be hers. The comb rests on the shelf. Old, wooden, its teeth spaced wide and slightly warped with time. 2 of the teeth have long since broken, but the woman's hand instinctively avoids them as she runs the comb through her hair. It feels rough, smells of oil and dust, and creaks between her fingers when gripped too tightly. Each morning, grooming her hair isn't just care. It's ritual, a way to ready herself for the day ahead, a small moment of control. To comb her hair is to gather her thoughts. Every movement is slow and deliberate, with pauses as if the comb is gliding not through hair but through memory. Some have dark, straight, thick hair. Others, fair and unruly, prone to tangles. One woman's is nearly gray, though her years aren't so many, but all of them tend to it. One adds a touch of oil. The scent of laurel trails through the room. Another simply wets her hair with water from the bowl. The room fills with presence. Women sit together, unbraiding, tying, sharing pins. One has an old bone hairpin, a gift. Another uses a bit of cloth-wrapped string. Sometimes one helps another, holding the strands, weaving a braid, smoothing it down. These moments are almost tender. Few words are spoken, just touch, and a glance into the little mirror, cracked since last summer. Headscarves are their own stories. Each woman has her own, tied differently, across the top of the head, around the neck, like a band. One is stitched from 2 old scraps. Another is thin and colorful, though faded. A scarf hides tiredness, makes a face look sterner, or softer. On days when one can't bear to show her face, it becomes a shield. Sometimes someone braids her hair. Sometimes she leaves it loose. But hairstyles here aren't about fashion or allure. They are the structure of the day. Like putting on a tunic, tying a belt, lifting one's head and walking to the door. After the brushing, the room holds the scent of oil, the warmth of fingers, and a faint rustle. The sound with which women breathe in the day before it begins. And even if the whole day turns gray, if the night offers no rest, the hairstyle remains. A memory of morning, a quiet reminder that even in this house, something can still be chosen. The colors in this house are not bright, not festive. They're muted, faded, but there's a softness to them. They don't shout, they whisper. They don't inspire envy, only invite the eye to linger a few seconds longer. The tunics are simple, made from coarse linen or wool, often patched and resewn. Once white, now gray. Burgundy has faded toward rust. Blue is dull, like the sky before rain. But even these humble fabrics are given life. With an embroidered ribbon at the sleeve, a red thread along the collar, or an old button from a better life stitched onto a poorer garment. Here, clothes aren't chosen. They're simply what one has. But each woman has at least one detail she considers her adornment. One wears a fine woolen headband reserved for special days. Another, a laced belt, handmade from a few twisted strands of thread. Jewelry is rare, but it exists. A single copper earring, missing its pair. A necklace of ceramic beads, half of them long lost. A bracelet made of twine, with an old coin hanging from it, pierced through the center. The women wear these not for others, but for themselves. As a memory, a talisman, a piece of identity they cling to, even when everything else around them feels foreign. In one of the rooms, there's a scrap of cloth kept aside, once given by a sailor who never returned. It's never worn, but each morning the woman takes it from beneath her pillow, touches it gently and puts it back. Its color, golden red, very warm. On particularly good days, the women rub scented oil on their wrists or necks. Hints of rose, laurel, or sometimes just the scent of wine. It's not for seduction. It's to feel different, if only for a few hours, to feel that their bodies still belong to them. When they gather by the doorway, their colors mix. Grays, sand tones, amber, lilac shadows. A moving mosaic of cloth, bodies, and scents. And even in their simplicity, they form a strange harmony. Because beauty here isn't for others. It's quiet, inward, and repetitive. In the motion of a comb, in the knot of a scarf, in the folds of a tunic that lost its shape long ago, yet still rests proudly across the shoulders. Beyond the door lies the street, narrow, stone, slightly sloped. It doesn't lead to temples, nor cross the roads where senators walk. The wealthy rarely pass through here, and if they do, it's either by accident or with very specific intent. Mostly it's porters, soldiers, weary merchants, foreigners from the market. Underfoot is mud, not deep, but sticky. It's not just dirt, it's a mix of dust, horse dung, spilled wine, crumbs of bread, and something else harder to name. In Rome, streets aren't swept daily, especially not here. And the women in sandals know well. Every step must be placed carefully so as not to slip. They leave the house one by one, slowly, not because there's nowhere to hurry, but because it's easier this way, to stretch the moment between inner calm and the outer world, between their own rooms and the gazes waiting just beyond the threshold. Those gazes, they are their own language. Some are sharp, challenging, others shy, curious. Some people pass by without lifting their eyes, but most, they stop. They don't always speak. They don't need to. The eyes say it all. Who wants what? Who hesitates? Who's come back a second time? And the women see it. They understand the look. They can read fear from desire, hesitation from aggression, politeness from contempt. After years here, the eyes become the primary tool. Words come second. Sometimes a look is an invitation, sometimes an insult. But more often, it's just fatigue. People on these streets are ordinary. Each has their own reason to pause near the door. When the first clients begin to appear, the air changes. It thickens, becomes heavier. Not from the heat, from anticipation. From the knowledge that the day ahead will be much like the one before. But for now, only morning footsteps in the dirt, glances, the rustle of cloth, the dry, dusty quiet in which each woman stands still, not rushing to speak. Because she knows the first word isn't always hers. And yet she stands there, among people, among windows, among the cries of merchants. She stands in the light that pours from above. And though there may be weariness deep in her soul, outwardly, only calm. And that look, the one that says more than she intends to reveal. There were no temples in this part of Rome, no silk shops or statues adorned with gold, but it was always full of people. And among those who appeared most often, there were two main kinds: sailors from southern ports and soldiers from the garrison stationed near the city walls. You could spot the sailors instantly, sun-darkened hands, cracked skin, eyes squinting, not from suspicion, but from habit under the sun. They spoke loudly, smelled of fish, tar, and wine, which they spilled even before crossing the threshold. They always brought something with them: seashells, copper rings, scraps of fabric. Not always as payment, often simply as gifts. The women had mixed feelings about them. Some liked the sailors, for their bluntness, for their storm stories, for their jokes. Others kept their distance, because every sailor leaves eventually and never says when he'll return, if he returns at all. Soldiers were different. Their scent, iron, sweat, leather. Their gaze, short, appraising. They spoke less. Their weariness came not from the sea, but from duty, from commands, from standing beneath the scorching sun at gates they're never allowed to pass through. Soldiers came regularly, not every day, but steadily, often alone, sometimes in pairs. They brought no gifts, told no tales, but they always paid, and paid precisely. They liked silence. Sometimes they asked for no talking at all, just to be near someone. Perhaps because outside these walls, they're always forced to shout. There were others too. Messengers, water carriers, gamblers, donkey drivers, former gladiators who had lost their edge. They showed up now and then, bringing something sweet, figs, hot rolls from the market. But they never stayed long. They passed through like shadows. Still, it was the sailors and soldiers who were the two constant waves, washing in one after the other, each with his own rhythm, his own silence, his own hands that touched gently or roughly, depending on how many nights had gone without sleep. The women had grown used to them. They could tell by footsteps in the corridor who had arrived. The sailor always laughed. The soldier, never. And in that difference, there was all of Rome, loud and quiet, drunken and restrained, distant and close. In this line of work, words didn't carry as much weight as gestures. The real exchange began out on the street, not inside, not in the room, but right there on the threshold. That's where the women learned to speak without speaking. The gaze, the first and most important tool. Not bold, not intrusive, more like an invitation, a glance that lingers one moment longer than it should. Not direct, but gliding, seemingly accidental. It says, I saw you. Did you see me? The hand, the second. A motion through the hair, a palm resting on a fabric-covered thigh. The edge of a scarf gently shifted off the shoulder. Fingers brushing a belt, and again, no words. But the client already feels it. He is seen and chosen. The voice, soft, often just a whisper, not full sentences, only fragments. Coming? Are you alone? It's cozy here. I'm free. Brief, without explanations. Each word, a key to a door that may open or stay closed. Sometimes the women joked among themselves, if he doesn't get it from the first glance, he's not worth a second. And it was true. Every gesture, every movement, a delicate dance requiring experience, not strength. In the corner of the wall, right by the entrance, someone once painted a symbol, a stylized hand with a single finger pointing outward. It served as a sign. Someone is waiting here. You may come in. Sometimes a name was scrawled beneath it, not a real one. A stage name, one of many. When a client stepped closer, everything slowed down. There was no need for much talking. A tilt of the head, a half smile, a quick glance downward. That was enough. It wasn't an act. It was practiced, protective. Some hardly spoke at all. They were called the quiet ones. And yet, they had the most clients. Because silence is also a language, especially in a world where everyone is always saying something. The women knew. Too much drives people away. So everything was reduced to the essentials. Half a movement, a glance, a hint. That was enough. Because the street taught them not to shout. It taught them how to be. Noticeable, but not provocative. Light, but unforgettable. And day after day, this musicless dance repeated itself. A part of the rhythm, like the air of Rome. Dusty, dense, and still, alive. The walls of the lupanar were never empty. Some might have called them neglected. But in truth, they were alive. Every scratch, every inscription, every little figure wasn't just a mark of time. It was a voice. A trace of someone's presence who didn't want to disappear. Where the plaster was soft enough, people left messages. With a fingertip, a piece of charcoal, sometimes a knife. Short phrases, names, dates, often jokes. Simple, coarse, but sincere. Like, Felix was here, paid honestly. Or, Claudia laughs like a goddess, especially after wine. These writings were the breath of an old house. Not art, but life. In one corner, a name surrounded by a heart. In another, a crude drawing of a man with a sword. Near the entrance, a palm print pressed purposefully into the clay when the wall was still wet. Someone once painted a symbol, a mix of a lyre and a grapevine. The women believed it was left by a poetess who came here not only for work. She'd scrawled 2 lines, now long forgotten, but the meaning was clear. There is music even in this silence. In the room most frequented by sailors, someone had carved an anchor into the wall with a sharp stone. It wasn't removed. On the contrary, it was traced over with oil so it wouldn't fade. Down the hallway, one wall was covered in tally marks, like a count. Each stroke, a day. Maybe someone hoped to return home. Or maybe they were simply marking time, trying not to forget that it was still moving. The women never erased those writings. Not even the ones they didn't like. Not even the ones about themselves. Ironic, teasing, filled with clumsy poetry. Because each mark was proof that someone had been there. Someone had come, had seen, and left a trace. In rooms where the walls darkened over time, the writings began to fade. Names disappeared. But the ones that remained became more precious. Because memory in this house didn't live in books. It lived in the walls. And when the night grew completely still, and the oil lamp cast shadows across the plaster, a woman might run her fingers over an old line and think, I'll leave something too, even if it's small. In the corner of the room stands a copper bowl, small, similar to one used for drinking water, but slightly deeper, with a delicate pattern etched around its rim. It once belonged to a very different home. Perhaps it was stolen, perhaps gifted. Now it lives here, and it has long become part of the furniture. Something no one talks about, but everyone knows. Inside the bowl, ash and fragments of old incense burned a few days ago. Frankincense, cheap, brittle, from the market near the port. Its scent, thick, persistent, mingled with damp air, old wood, and wine. The women didn't always use it, but on days when the fatigue clung too tightly, when the air felt suffocating, when clients came one after another, then, in the evening, after it all, the bowl with the incense would once again become the center of the room. The incense was lit slowly. The wick smoldered, and the smoke rose in a thin ribbon, as if someone were writing invisible letters in the air. The silence in that moment felt deeper. The smoke curled around the folds of their tunics, slid across their faces, brushed against their eyelids. It was like the space was being washed clean. The women would sit closer. One of them might close her eyes. Another might gaze through the haze at the lamp's flame. Another whispered something, not a prayer, more like a thought, to herself, about something far away. The bowl with incense didn't change reality. It only created the illusion of another space. A little cleaner, a little lighter, a little more peaceful. If only for a few minutes. The scent of frankincense soaked into the fabric, into their hair, into their fingers. And even the next morning, when the lamp had long since gone out and the day was beginning anew, the room still held that faint afterglow of the evening before. The copper darkened with each passing year. At the bottom of the bowl, a layer of blackened residue that could no longer be scrubbed away. But that's where the strongest fragrance lingered. There, the remnants of all the evenings when the women gathered, sat in silence, breathed in the smoke, and called it something close to peace. Because in this house, peace did not simply arrive. It had to be made, even if all it took was an old copper bowl and a handful of incense. When the day reaches its midpoint and the light begins to shift, more golden, dimmer, warmer, shadows appear along the walls of the house. They are long, soft, almost weightless, and yet alive. One glides across the wall from a curtain swaying in the breeze. Another stretches from the hand of a woman brushing her hair in the doorway. A third comes from the lamp, now placed a little closer to the hall. All of them move slowly, as if swimming through air. These shadows do not frighten. They are familiar. They are part of the space. But there's something special about them, as if the house itself breathes through them. In the narrow corridors between rooms, the air is different. It doesn't move. It hangs, saturated with scents: rose oil, wine, frankincense, damp fabric, human skin. Every sound is amplified here. Or else, a whisper feels like a touch. The women rarely speak aloud in these corridors. They are used to whispering. Words, brief, a few syllables, few. Glances, more important. A finger brushing an elbow, a signal, a nod, a reply. In those whispers, everything is said. A request, an agreement, a piece of advice. Sometimes, an apology. Conflicts in this house arise often, but never stay loud for long. No one has the energy for it, and no one wants to leave wounds behind. So reconciliation too comes in a whisper, a half smile, a barely spoken yes. The passages are so narrow that two women must press their shoulders to the wall to pass. And that creates a kind of intimacy. The kind where you know another's body not by sight, but by closeness. By a touch in the dark. By a breath brushing your ear. In the evening, when the lamps begin to dim, these corridors take on a different life entirely. The shadows grow thicker as if they have weight, and the whispers deepen, thicken. Sometimes it seems the very walls are whispering to one another. In places like these, it's hard to tell where the body ends and the space begins, where thought fades and sound begins. But this is where the women sometimes pause, not knowing why. They simply listen. They stand in the half-dark. Because in these corridors, time moves differently, slower. As if Rome itself, beyond the house walls, falls silent, just for a moment, to make room for shadow and stillness. And all that remains is the soft shuffle of feet, the flicker of trembling light, and words that are never spoken aloud, but linger in memory for a very long time. There were no written laws in this house, no signs with rules, no commands issued. Yet everything operated according to a clear system. Invisible, silent, understood only by those who had been here long enough. She who had more clients held more freedom. Not always measured in money, often in glances. She could claim the better room, linger longer at the table, stay a bit more in the bath. She wouldn't say it aloud, but no one would ask her to move. There were elders. Not by age, but by experience. Those who knew when to stay silent, when to speak, when a single look was enough. No one argued with them. They assessed quietly, and every now and then offered a single line that weighed more than a shout. Their no was final. Their not now, universally understood. There were newcomers, quiet, observant, still unsure. They always waited. They were given what remained. The leftover time, the leftover clients, the leftover rooms. Yet they were looked at with a kind of warmth. Because everyone here had once been new. And then there were those who weren't liked. Perhaps for laughing too loudly, for being too harsh, for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. They weren't cast out. but no one shared with them. They had few allies, yet even they remained, because here, even distance was part of coexistence. Everything moved by quiet observation. Who spent time with whom? Who offended whom yesterday? Who was in a mood today? Who was tired? Who brought something back from the market? Who didn't say thank you? Everything was noticed. And there were the women who mastered the middle. Not too close, not too distant, almost invisible, but never waiting. They always found a way to keep what was theirs. They could step aside, but only when it served them. And those were the ones most respected. These rules were never spoken aloud, never explained to newcomers. But every movement, every silence was part of the structure. Because a house with many women and little space cannot survive without invisible boundaries. And in the quiet, in the sound of footsteps on stone, in the glances exchanged over supper, everything rested on a delicate balance. A balance held not by orders, but by experience and memory. Lunch in this house is not a ritual, not a celebration, more of a pause, a brief moment of stillness between what has already happened and what is still to come before evening. During this time, everything slows down, voices soften, footsteps grow scarce, the air grows heavier. After hours of tension, mental, physical, emotional, the women try to shed their exhaustion. It doesn't always work, but they've learned, at the very least, to slow their hearts for a moment. And often, all it takes is water, plain, cold, in a cup. The cup, rough, either glass or clay, depending on what hasn't yet broken. In it, water brought from the alleyway well, or scooped from the big barrel in the courtyard. Not always clean, but cool. And that's enough. A woman raises the cup to her lips, sips slowly. The water doesn't refresh. It calms. It doesn't energize. It muffles the noise that rang too loudly in her head. Sometimes she touches the water to her forehead. Sometimes she wets her neck. The drops slide slowly down, leaving dark lines on the fabric. The room is quiet. Someone nearby clicks a jug against the stone floor. Someone else washes their hands, and the water rustles in a basin. The air smells of mint mixed with grape vinegar. Perhaps someone rubbed their feet after a hard morning. Bodies begin to relax. One woman sits on the floor, leaning against the wall. Another lies on her side, face hidden beneath a scarf. A third simply holds the cup in her palms, not drinking, just feeling the coolness. Midday is the only time no one hurries. In that moment, the city beyond the walls feels distant. Even the marketplace grows still. Even the cart drivers vanish from the streets. Only the rooms remain, the water, and the silence. After a few sips, the woman carefully sets the cup down again. And for a few more minutes, she just sits, silent, breathing, listening to the sound of dripping water, to someone's sigh, to the cool stone beneath her palm, holding a chill the body cannot. And though she knows movement will soon return, the door will open again, there will be talk, action, waiting. In this moment, with damp glass in her fingers, it feels like she returns to herself. If only briefly, if only until the next knock at the door. In this house, people didn't speak with their voices. At least, not always. There were too many moments when words weren't right. When they startled, annoyed, or shattered the fragile balance between strangers in a cramped space. So the women learned to observe and to understand. A gesture held just a second too long. A gaze not lowered, but turned slightly aside. A hand brushing the neck, not out of nerves, but in quiet anticipation. A tug at the tunic near the shoulder, a sign of discomfort. All of it was understood as language, without grammar, but with startling precision. When someone entered, A woman wouldn't ask, "Are you angry?" She could see it in the fingers rubbing at a belt. In the way he stood, weight shifted ever so slightly to one side. In the way his eyes landed on nothing in particular. When someone arrived with a different mood, gentler, more hesitant, that too was obvious. He stayed closer to the wall. He touched the doorframe as if seeking something steady. His voice might have been calm, but his eyes were not. The women used this language too. Sometimes they lifted a hand to their hair, not to fix it, but to create a pause. Sometimes they set a jug on the floor very slowly, not just for the sound, but as the beginning of an unspoken phrase. Even among themselves, everything was conveyed with a glance. A single second was enough to say, "Don't approach him. He's dangerous." Or, "She's not in the mood today." Sometimes the gesture was so subtle an outsider wouldn't have seen it. But here, it was read instantly. Two fingers pressed lightly together meant, "Wait for me." A scarf nudged toward the left shoulder meant, "I'm not ready." It wasn't a conspiracy. It was habit. A delicate tuning to the vibrations of a space where everyone lived too close together. And though these women came from different places, with different voices and stories, in the language of gestures they were the same, because it required no words, only presence, and the ability to see. And to see truly is to understand just a little more than what's shown, and a little less than what you might wish to know. The market wasn't far, just 2 turns away, past an old gate that opened each morning before dawn. Though the square itself couldn't be seen from the windows of the house, its voice was always there. It seeped through cracks, drifted past doors, slid along the corridor, and spread across the stone floor like the scent of spices. In the morning, women's voices, those who sold herbs, bread, nuts. Their calls were long, rhythmic, almost like songs. They shouted to customers and to each other, never silent for a minute. Laughter would sometimes break out, sharp, honest, brief, like a shard of sunlight fallen to the ground. Now and then, names echoed through the alleys. "Marcus, Livia, look, fresh olives." These shouts rolled from the marketplace to the narrow lane where the house stood, then dissolved between the stone walls. By midday, the sounds shifted. Drums joined in. Musicians laid out their instruments right on the square. The rhythms were simple but unmistakable. Someone tapped on metal. Someone hummed old songs of war, of the sea, of love. That music reached the house too. It slipped inside and hung in the air like dust. The women didn't always listen to it consciously, but sometimes, in a quiet moment, they'd catch themselves humming along without realizing. Occasionally, something unexpected joined the market's symphony. The clatter of jugs, the crash of a toppled cart, the barking of dogs. It all merged into a constant current that became the background, and layered over it, life in the house, the hush of rooms, the whisper of passageways, the rustle of tunics. To the women, the market was a window to the world outside. They knew it by sound alone. If the cries were louder, it meant new goods had arrived. If there was quiet, it meant rain. If music played, a festival. If curses echoed, wine had come and was already being poured. The market had its own life, but its breath reached here, into these walls, into these rooms, into fingers massaging tired shoulders in time with the drums, into glances that paused at the door as if expecting someone to enter. And when the day leaned toward evening and the market's voice faded, a particular kind of silence would settle in, the kind that made everything feel just a little emptier. But even then, it seemed the sound still lingered, somewhere in the walls, somewhere in the air, like an echo that had become part of the house itself. In this house, no one waited solely for coins. Rome was a city where everything had its price. But that price didn't always ring in metal. Life here had taught the women to accept whatever was given. Sometimes silver, sometimes a word, sometimes a bottle of wine. Wine, that was the most common. It came in pitchers, in dark glass bottles, in clay amphorae still dusted with soil. It wasn't always drunk right away. Often it was saved for when things got worse, or better. Clients brought it from the market. Some brought homemade batches, sour, red, with sediment. Others, a touch sweet, with the scent of dried fruits. Some added spices, honey, pepper, even resin. It made the wine thicker, bolder, something that warmed not just the body, but the mind from the first sip. At times, a bottle was a true treasure. If the day had been hard, it was opened and shared. By two, maybe three. They drank slowly, laughed more than usual, said things they would never have dared to say in the daylight. But there were other days too, when a bottle of wine was the only payment. And on those days, the woman took it in silence, without protest. Because it was better to have something than nothing at all. Because tomorrow, there might not even be wine. Sometimes the wine came with other things, a piece of cheese, a bunch of herbs, a roll wrapped in cloth. It felt like an apology, like an explanation, like someone trying not to seem entirely poor. The women didn't tally up the worth of what they received. They read it in the eyes, whether to expect that man again or never wait for him at all. And even a bottle of wine wasn't just a drink. Sometimes it was a message that someone remembered, that someone wanted to leave something behind, even if they had nothing else to give. In this house, the wine was stored in a clay alcove by the entrance. Each bottle, a different shape, a different kind of glass. Some were corked, some plugged with rags. And yet, in each one, there was more than just liquid. In each, a piece of someone's day, someone's choice, someone's unspoken thank you. And on those evenings, when the room sank into half-light, and the only sound was the soft hiss of the lamp, a woman would pour a little wine into a bowl. She'd sit facing the wall, cradling it in her palms, thinking not of those who paid with gold, but of those who left behind wine. In this house, someone is always arriving, and someone is always staying. Some leave in silence. Others vanish suddenly, as if dissolved into the air. But the most noticeable are always those who have just arrived, and those who have been here from the very beginning. The experienced women. They are like the shadows of the walls. They don't rush. Every movement is precise, measured. They speak only when necessary, avoid abrupt gestures. Their faces are calm, not cold, just focused. Because every line, every glance comes not from age, but from experience. Their rooms carry a scent that lingers even after the windows are opened. A mix of fabric, incense, aged wood, wine, and something else. Something elusive, left behind by hundreds of conversations and thousands of silences. And then there are the new ones, like fresh leaves on an old tree. Still soft, still eager to be liked. They smile more, talk more, ask about things no one here answers anymore. They touch objects gently, as if afraid to break them. They are easy to spot. They don't yet know how to stand the right way. They haven't learned when to be silent. Their hands don't know where to rest, but in their eyes, there is curiosity, and fear, and hope. And none of it is annoying. It's simply familiar, because every older woman once stood just like that, in the doorway, hair braided, uncertainty in her shoulders. Some of the experienced women approach the new ones, sit beside them, share the silence, hand over a ribbon or a piece of bread, not as a grand gesture of friendship, but simply as a quiet. I know. I've been where you are. Others watch from a distance, not with disdain, just from space. Because every woman must find her own way through these walls. And when the newcomer learns how to hold a gaze, how to stay silent while still speaking, then she will be accepted. Not before. The entire house seems divided into layers, but not vertically, not by rooms. These layers live in glances, in how one woman passes another, in how one leaves the last piece of cheese, and the other takes it without thanks. Because that's how it's done. Because that's what's understood. And when the day comes when the newcomer herself passes on her first scarf to someone even newer, that will be her first true step into the community. Without words, without ceremony, just through a gesture. As everything is here. In this house, washing is not just hygiene. It is a transition, a boundary between what was and what will be. A cleansing, physical, emotional, and ritual. There are no grand baths here, no steam rooms, no marble tubs. Just a small alcove with basins where water is brought. And each woman bathes there in turn. Slowly, as if in silence, she's preparing to rinse away not dirt, but exhaustion. The water is slightly warm when they're lucky, cold when they're not. But even cold, it brings relief. First the shoulders, then the neck, then the chest, the belly, the thighs. Not all at once, carefully. A woman holds a basin in her hands, scoops water with a clay cup, and pours it over herself in thin streams. The water runs down her body, pools in her collarbones, traces the line of her spine. It doesn't wash away sweat, but weariness. Not odor, but heaviness. On the shelf lies a sliver of soap, used sparingly. First, the hands, then the skin behind the ears, then the rest. The bodies here know the order, because everything has its time, its rhythm, its motion. Sometimes women bathe together, but in silence, just a glance, maybe a quiet request. Pour a little more. Then, a careful movement of the hand as one helps rinse the other's back. And in that touch, more understanding than in any spoken word. After the water, the scent. Some rub rose oil into their skin. Others, a blend of herbs and vinegar. The aroma is more than pleasantness. It's a reminder that the body is not just a tool. It is a part of you. It deserves to be touched with respect. And then, after washing, comes inner stillness, as if not only the skin was renewed, but everything around it too. The basin is empty, the towel is damp, the hair clings to drops. But somewhere inside, quiet, deep, long, comforting. And in those minutes, when the water has been wiped away and feet stand again on the stone floor, the woman thinks, I'm still here, and I'm still alive. Because cleansing is not just about the body, it is about memory, about the right to oneself, and about those moments when you can return, not to yesterday, not to tomorrow, but to this very second, to feel that everything is in its place, even in a house where everything feels like it doesn't belong. Each woman here has a piece of jewelry, not always valuable, not always beautiful, but hers, something small, worn close to the skin. Most often, a necklace made of beads, of glass shards, sometimes of seeds, of old coins, of whatever she could find or once received as a sign. This necklace is not worn for show. It's often hidden beneath the fabric. But the moment it is placed around the neck, something shifts. The back straightens. The gaze grows a little firmer, as if a boundary appears between who you are to others and who you are to yourself. Some of the adornments are handmade, assembled from fragments, strung on a thread that has snapped more than once, tied with a knot that over time hardened like stone. Every single bead. Deliberate. One woman wears a necklace of deep blue and black glass beads. She says it was once her mother's bracelet. Another, a red one, with 2 silver inlays. A legionary brought it. He left. The necklace stayed. The marks on the neck are not always from jewelry. Sometimes they're from a scarf, from rubbed skin. Sometimes from fingers, not always gentle. Sometimes from the shadow of time. And it's these marks that make a woman real. When evening light strikes at just the right angle, you can see the glass shimmer on her neck. Even the tiniest bead, like a star in the dusk. It changes nothing. Won't make the day easier, but it's there. And it is this small thing that allows a woman to remember herself. When she touches the necklace with her fingers, it's not just a gesture. It's a return to memories, to her body, to the feeling of being whole. Because even in a house where almost nothing belongs to you, this little thing is yours. And at night, when everything quiets and the lamp's glow fades, she takes off the necklace, lays it gently on the stone, as if it were something alive, and whispers, "Until tomorrow." In August, Rome burns. The air is thick, sticky, clinging to the skin like damp cloth. The stone streets radiate heat, and even the shadows feel hot. People move more slowly, speak less, and search for water and shade. But inside the house, behind thick walls, underfoot, there is clay. Ordinary, gray-green, compacted by years. And it stays cool, even when the outside heat feels like it's melting the world. The floor absorbs the exhaustion. A woman steps barefoot and feels the coolness rising through her heels. It's not pleasure. It's relief. Like the first sip of water after a long day. Like a breath after a difficult conversation. There are traces on the floor, not always visible, but felt. A faint hollow where a woman once knelt. A chipped edge where a jug had been dropped. In the corner, a darker stain from a lamp that once tipped over. Clay is not sterile. It holds stories. Dust, wine, salt, water, sweat, the scent of oil. It absorbs everything, holds everything. Like an old letter no one reads, but no one throws away. In the evenings, when fatigue becomes especially heavy, the women sometimes sit directly on the floor, lean their backs against the wall, stretch out their legs, and in those moments, it's the easiest way to feel human again. When nothing touches you but stone and yourself. Sometimes they lie on it, just like that. No mattress, no sheet, just the floor. Because sometimes only it can hold you better than any bed. It doesn't judge, it doesn't ask, it doesn't speak. And in the morning, when the first step out of bed meets the cool surface beneath your feet, in that silence, before all the noise and faces, that's when you understand. The clay remembers everything. And it always takes you back, even in August, even when the body is scorched by heat and loss, even when the night brought no rest. The clay floor, like the earth itself, always beneath you, always cool, always yours. Outside, there's still daylight, but inside, evening has arrived. The sun, sliding along the roof, barely brushes the alley walls, and the light enters the room low and sideways, as if shy. There are no windows here, but the shadows grow longer, and the air grows quieter. The woman lights the lamp. It's always the same motion. She leans down, holds the wick, takes a coal or flint. The smell of oil immediately fills the room, blending with wine, sweat, and the faint smoke of incense still smoldering in the bowl. The flame is small. It flickers, as if unsure, to burn or to fade. But it stays. And in the corner of the room, a soft yellow patch appears. It doesn't illuminate fully, just outlines. A bowl, The edge of a spoon, the corner of a bed, hair on shoulders. In the lupanar, a moment of pause begins. The door is still open. Clients could still come. But between the fatigue of the afternoon and the uncertainty of the evening, there is this brief moment, as if the room exhales, and with it, those who live inside. Someone walks barefoot down the hallway, toes rustling through dust. Somewhere, a muffled cough. In the neighboring room, a woman hums an old song. No verses, just the melody, repeating again and again. The woman sitting by the lamp doesn't rush. She drapes fabric over her shoulder, gently wipes her hands, drinks water from a bowl, leaving a trace on her lips. Fingers run over her necklace. Every motion, slow, deliberate, but familiar. The lamp casts a shadow on the wall. In that shadow, everything unsaid, the fatigue, the fear, the routine, the peace, and perhaps a drop of loneliness. Not the biting kind, just the kind that exists. Higher up on the wall, a crack stretching from ceiling to floor. It's only visible in this light. As old as the house itself, perhaps as old as the woman who sits there. And when she lowers her head, the lamp flickers. The flame dances for a moment, as if it remembers something too. This is not night, and not yet the end. This is evening, gentle, bitter, lit by oil. The kind that asks for nothing, only presence, only quiet, only the flame in the corner, trembling but still burning. When the light fades in the first rooms, the house feels as if it's wrapped in a soft fabric of silence. But this silence is not complete. It's woven from breaths, the rustle of fabric, the creak of wood, and faint voices slipping through the walls like warmth drifting through cold air. At this hour, the women speak. Not loudly, just enough for one other to hear. Sometimes, only for themselves. In the dark, even those who stayed silent all day begin to open up, because the night doesn't ask for permission. It simply listens. Did you have anything before this? One asks. A garden and a boy with a scraped nose, another replies. It doesn't have to be true, but it matters. In these moments, there is no judgment, no need to prove anything. Whatever is said before sleep stays within the walls or disappears with the dream. Someone tells a story about the sea, how she once saw it from a hill covered in wild thyme. Another speaks of a journey to the Temple of Venus, led by a man no one saw again. Someone else talks about dreams. Dreams where she's not here, where she runs through fields, or cooks soup, or just sits by a window where the light comes not from above but from the side. Sometimes they talk about fears. What if I never leave this house? Then we'll leave together. These words aren't promises. They're blankets, fleeting warmth that lasts a minute but carries them through the night. Sometimes the conversations stop mid-sentence, not out of offense, but because of sleep. Eyes close, voices trail off, and the other woman doesn't wake her. She simply lies beside her, listening to the silence, letting it hold them both. In the dark, there are no faces, only voices gently touching one another, and memory, which hurts less at night. It becomes a lantern in the distance, smoke that hasn't yet vanished, a shadow that can be embraced. And when one woman wakes in the middle of the night and hears the calm, steady breathing of another beside her, she falls asleep again. Because she knows, as long as someone is near, the night is not so frightening. The silence in the house is never complete. Just beyond the wall, a little further down the alley, there's a tavern. Senators and merchants in colorful togas never go there. It's a place for soldiers, dock workers, craftsmen, the ones who speak loudly, who laugh at everything, and at nothing. As evening falls, the tavern doors remain ajar. The light spilling out is yellow and flickering, laced with the scent of wine, smoke, and roasted barley. Voices drift from inside, broken, uneven, but confident. The kind that no longer need to prove anything. Pour another, Celsus. We're alive today, tomorrow we'll see. These shouts carry no malice. They're part of the night's landscape, like a distant sea, unseen but always murmuring. Between the shouts, there are songs, disjointed. Someone starts, others follow, slowly at first, then louder. Then the melody falls apart, and someone laughs like a child. Then they start again, the same song, the same words, but with new wine and a new voice. The women in the house listen to these songs without going to the windows. They know them by heart. They know when the chorus comes, when someone will yell too loud, when a jug will crash to the floor. For some, it's an irritating background. For others, music. Not because it's beautiful, but because it's familiar, constant, like the heartbeat of a house that never fully sleeps. Sometimes the songs mention women's. The names aren't always real. But when a name like yours floats through the night, between laughter and a sigh, it feels like a touch. Light, drunken, but real. And when the sound of a shattered cup echoes through the window, when someone hiccups so loudly that even the dog barks in reply, the woman in the room smiles. Because this night is just like yesterday, and like tomorrow. Even if no one comes tonight, even if the day was heavy, beyond the wall, there's still singing. And that means the world goes on, and it's okay to fall asleep. To the singing, to the shouting, to the tavern's noise, which too is part of the home. When the last voices in the corridor fade and the lamps burn no longer for guests, but for the women themselves, it's time to tidy up. Not because anyone commands it, but because the body asks for it. The space asks for it. The day must end differently than it began. Cleaner, calmer. The room is dim. The lamp flickers weakly, casting long shadows on the walls. The woman bends down, lifts a piece of cloth from the floor. It's called a cover, but by now, it's more than just an object. She gently shakes it out by the door, where the echoes of the tavern still linger. Then she fluffs the bedding and smooths the mattress. Her fingers quickly knead the edge of the sheet, while her eyes stay fixed on the lamp, making sure it doesn't go out. In this moment, everything matters. The movements are soft but deliberate. This isn't cleaning for the sake of order. It's about restoring herself, reclaiming control over at least this little patch of space. On the low shelf stands a jug of water. It is always filled before bed. A ritual. You cannot lie down while the jug is empty. The water is for the tired body, the dry mouth, the restless night. The water is a promise. You will wake again and have a new beginning. Sometimes the woman uses it to rinse her hands. Sometimes she just looks at it, touches it, moves it a little closer to the bed. Because when everything else can vanish, these small things hold you. They are anchors. After the tidying is done, a special kind of silence settles over the room, different from daytime. It's thick, slightly warm and damp, and it smells not of wine or sweat or dust, but of clean fabric, still damp from her hands, and of water that has cooled slightly, but is still alive. The woman sits on the bed, gently wraps herself in the cover. Her fingers trace the seam, the worn edge of the wooden bed frame. And somewhere in that simple motion, there is peace, because simple things are all there is. And tomorrow, it will all begin again. But for now, the jug is full, the bed is smooth, the lamp still burns. And that means there's still a little peace left. Rome doesn't fall asleep all at once. It stirs for a long time in the dreams of its people, in the creaks of doors, in the late footsteps echoing through narrow alleys. But sometime after midnight, the city finally quiets. And this silence is different. It's not the absence of noise. It's a conclusion. No one is shouting in the streets anymore. The tavern has gone still. The wine is finished. The songs have softened into breath. Only one man, very drunk, still stumbles over his own feet, endlessly singing the same verse. But even he is quieter now. Inside the house, the silence isn't absolute either. It's alive. You can hear someone turning in their sleep, someone breathing deeper, the wooden bench creaking beneath a shifting body. In the corner, the lamp still smolders, but it's nearly out. It's light, no more than a whisper. The woman lies wrapped in her cover. Her eyes are open, but no longer looking. They simply exist in the dark. Her thoughts don't take shape. They drift, dissolve. She remembers faces, not always names, hands, glances. Money handed over in silence. A bottle left behind without explanation. But most of all, voices. Because voices last the longest, even after everything else fades. And in this darkness, which covers everything, the body, the bowls, the old cloths, the traces on the floor, there is a certain purity, because night is the only time when nothing is required of anyone. No one expects a response. No one reaches out. No one asks. Only silence, and a whisper, and breath, and somewhere beyond, invisible Rome also sleeping, with its streets, windows, columns, baskets of fish, overturned amphorae, and extinguished torches. The woman closes her eyes. The lamp goes out. The darkness becomes complete, but it does not frighten. It is like water, into which you slowly descend. And in this descent, there is release, and acceptance, and peace. It won't last long, but for now, it is here. The room is dark. The lamp has gone out on its own without interference. The flame trembled one last time, released a small puff of smoke, and vanished. Now only the night remains, and the body, wrapped in a cover like a seashell. The stone walls are cold, but familiar. They no longer repel. On the contrary, they embrace. In this space, where every sound is twice as loud and every breath feels like an eternity, sleep arrives differently. Not suddenly, slowly. First, the thoughts disappear, then the images. Then, the body relaxes so deeply it no longer feels the floor, the bed, the room. Only the breath remains, deep, steady. Dreams here are not vivid. They are like shadows in lamplight, barely visible, yet present. Someone walks down a street that no longer exists. Someone laughs, though their face is unclear. Someone calls out a name that's long been forgotten. These dreams leave no traces. They come and go. No one remembers them in the morning, and no one tries. That, in itself, is the point. The woman sleeps. The room holds nothing but the sound of her breathing. Time has stopped. Beyond the wall, silence. Beyond the door, darkness. But here, in this stone box where the bed is a boat and the blanket is a wave, sleep has become home. In this dream, she does not think about tomorrow, nor yesterday. There is no need to choose, to speak, to reach out. Only to be. And to be is enough. Thank you for spending this night with us. If you enjoyed this quiet journey, feel free to leave a comment or subscribe. And now, good night and sweet dreams.